Namaste. Welcome to this rather festive feeling satsang. We went all out on tinsel this year, so sorry, I apologize in advance. So satsang is really for the direct experiencing of truth, the direct knowing and being of what you actually are. But sometimes it can help to understand a little bit, give your mind some food to understand how we got to this point. How did we get to where we are right now in our spiritual journey? Exactly wherever each one of us is. How did we get there? So in that, for that reason, I'd like to tell you a story. So, and even if you've heard it before, I'd like you to listen as if you've never heard it ever. And I'd like you to listen as if it's the most important thing you're ever going to hear. And I'd like you to listen as if it wasn't being recorded, even though it is. So as if you have to get it now, you have to really hear it now. This is a one-time deal. And I'd like you to listen as if this is the last satsang ever that anyone is ever going to do at all. Because it is that important. It's a fictional tale, a completely fictional tale. And nothing I say in the next 20 minutes or so is going to be true. But it's also completely going home now, right? Well, but it's also completely relevant. So once before time began, there was just the formless consciousness that was everywhere, in filling every atom of the universe, just completely present everywhere, not absent from anywhere at all. It was just watching, and there was absolutely nothing to watch. So the consciousness kind of said, well, this is a bit dull, really. Let me play and create some shapes. And it went through millennia and universes and created all of these shapes and forms, from the smallest amoeba to a blade of grass to anything that you can think of and everything that you can think of. And it began to enjoy experiencing itself through these shapes, what it was like to be a bird, what it was like to be a cat, what it was like to be grass or tinsel. And at some point in this formless consciousness, a human body appeared. And something amazing happened when a human body appeared. Bear in mind, as I'm telling this story, it's completely fictional. For the first time ever, the consciousness was able to think about itself with a human brain. And it began this quest to try and understand what it is, to really come to terms and understand. And suddenly it had this new capacity to think about itself that it didn't have in any of the other previous forms that it had created. It sounds a bit biblical, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. And then as it began to think about itself, it began to think that it existed. It began to think about what it was. And the first thing it saw was the human body, and it said, that's what I am. And then it recognized thoughts going on, and it began to really think, this is me. This is what I am. These thoughts going on are me, and this body is me. And that sense of it identifying with the body began to be reinforced by the emotions that it had when it believed those thoughts. When it believed negative thoughts, it began to feel really, really bad and scared. When it believed positive thoughts, it began to feel quite good, I'm doing all right. And most importantly, it began to think that it really did exist as a separate being. Of course, it never really actually did. This separate being that it thought it was, because it had suddenly appeared from out of nothingness. He was a separate being suddenly. And it's purely consisting of thoughts, I thoughts, only. And the resulting emotions and experiences that come from that. And everything that this I entity began to experience began to back up its beliefs, because it was convinced that it was only in one place, one human body only, one mind only. That's all it was. It had forgotten, in thoughts at least, it's everywhere, its nature of being everywhere. It was convinced that it was only here. It was convinced, more importantly, that it was its thoughts and its emotions and its body, that that's all it was. And because it forgot its everywhereness, it had to try to explain what everything else was that it seemed to be experiencing. So it invented all these other beings all of a sudden. It created 7.5 billion human beings, when really they weren't there a moment before. And all of these other forms. And everything it seemed to experience with these other imaginary beings began to reinforce this idea that it was only, present in one place only. It began to imagine it was having relationships with these other beings, and it was getting, going through its life. And every time that the body it was using to think about itself disappeared, it really believed that it disappeared. And there would be periods of absence, no experience at all, where there was no thought happening. In this part of the story, we can fast forward over 100,000 human bodies coming and going, and in each one it's having unique thoughts and experiences about itself, trying to understand itself, understand the world, and understand these other beings that seem to be there, and how to get what it wants from them, how to get what it needs from them. Of course, it never really existed except in thoughts. It never really was separate except in thoughts. And over time, it began to suffer. It began to fear these endings. It began to fear when the body disappears, because it really thought it was disappearing. And it experienced every single human experience it could have, of getting what it wants, of not getting what it wants, of having the best life, the worst life, the richest, the poorest, of being a saint and a sinner, and everything in between, completely. Every human experience that is possible to have. All the while, it was absolutely convinced. It thought it was an actual separate being in thought. And because it thought it was a separate being, and it was using thought to understand itself, it had no capacity to look back at where it came from at all. It could not understand through thought the formless consciousness that's everywhere that it really was. And as the eons passed, it began to suffer more and more. And eventually, in a certain body, it had access to certain thoughts that it never had before. Like, where did I come from? And what's the point of all this? And, really, what is the meaning of all this? What is the purpose of existence? What's the point in doing all this if I'm just going to disappear at the end of it all? And then at some point, as it really begins to entertain these questions, it comes across an imaginary being that says, you're not actually somewhere, you're actually everywhere. And you've forgotten that because you've begun to value thoughts more than that which is before thoughts. This imaginary being talks to it as if it really exists, because that's all that can be done. And so this entity I begins to search for this formless consciousness that it really has heard that that's what it really is, because it's convinced it's real, and it's convinced it's separate, and it's convinced it has to search for it. And after a while, it begins to experience that formless consciousness. And then it becomes really convinced that it needs to go back to that formless consciousness, that it needs to go back into its source, because it really believes it's real, this I entity, which is really only just a bunch of thoughts. It never really existed except as thoughts. And the more it experiences that which it came from, the formless reality, the more determined it is that it is the one that needs to get back there. And it sets out trying to destroy itself, because it heard somewhere that the formless reality isn't thinking. And it looks at itself, it says, I'm thinking, I need to stop doing that. How do I undo myself? How do I unravel myself? And probably for quite a few lifetimes more, it completely tries to undo itself. Why? Because it's sure that it exists as a separate being. Absolutely convinced. And then at some point, which we can probably fast forward a little bit more, it has the most vital thought of all, which is, perhaps I never really existed as a separate being, ever. And perhaps my very effort to get back to my source is that which is making me seem separate from it. And then it begins to understand finally that anything it tries to do in thought, effort, or action from one place only in time and space only serves to emphasize the fact that it's not already home. And finally, it comes to understand that there is nothing it can do to find its way back home, because it never really existed. And that all of its stories, all of its suffering, all of its tragedy, everything it's ever experienced, ever as a separate being, never really occurred in reality. And it's very, very shocked for a while. It's really shocked. Like, I've been experiencing this virtual reality for eons. And now I'm starting to figure out that this I entity never really existed except for the thoughts and the resulting emotions that happen because of those thoughts and experiences. And then all these other beings that I imagined had to verify my reality that I was sure was going on. Don't worry, it's got a happy ending, this one. And in the end, it comes to see that there is nothing at all it needs to do to find its way back home, because it never actually left, ever. It only thought it did. And therefore, there's never anything, any journey has ever occurred. It comes to understand that thought cannot see what's before thought. And if it only uses thought to figure this out, it's going to go around in circles forever. And has done. And finally, it realizes that thought is valuable only in the world of duality, of becomingness, and all these thoughts that this I entity has thought it had become irrelevant and meaningless and pointless. especially all its thoughts about its journey back home to the one, to the source. Eventually, it comes to understand that all thoughts are not going to show it reality at all. And eventually, it comes to understand that nothing has ever happened to it at all. It's always been everywhere. It's always been omnipotent. It's always been omnipresent. It's always been so extremely powerful that it created this I entity out of itself, made out of thoughts. And this I entity went on this journey over thousands and thousands of years and probably hundreds of thousands of bodies. All the while just to end up back right where it started and to see that nothing has ever occurred, paradoxically. And it comes to finally understand that nothing it can think about itself is ever going to show it the truth. There's nothing wrong with thoughts, but this I entity even gives up the ideas it's treasured most about merging back into where it came from, finding its way back home. And it comes to see that on a level of thought, there will always seem to be a journey further to go. And finally, it comes to recognize itself, where thoughts such as nothing has ever occurred to me, nothing has ever happened, nothing was ever created or destroyed. There is no such thing as time or space. It only looked that way when I thought I was one body in particular. It only looked that way when I thought I was looking from somewhere in particular. Bear in mind, it's a completely fictional story. Nothing ever happened at all. But it's the most important story, really, because it shows where our I entity has been. And if you bear in mind that the one formless consciousness is having this dream in every single human body, there is just one collective dream happening through all of these brains. In each brain, in each body, it's convinced it's separate and having a unique and totally distinct lifetime. All the while, the formless consciousness just watches. And eventually, the I thinkingness dissolves because it realizes it never really existed in the first place. So hopefully you recognized yourself at some point in that story, that fictional story of the I entity me. Hopefully you recognized yourself perhaps as the one trying to find its way home, or the one realizing there's nothing for it to do to get home, or the one realizing that nothing ever happened to it anyway. That in its quest to understand itself, it got confused, thought it was a body, and then experienced beginnings and endings over and over and over again. So it's a fictional story. It's the greatest work of fiction ever written or experienced ever. No story that's ever written by any author will top that. The story of I, and its fall from grace seemingly, and its traveling through all these lifetimes and then finally coming back to realize where it came from. And then finally seeing that it never left, that it always was that which was just watching, that it only got confused in thoughts. And if that seems confusing, don't worry about it. Something inside you understands what's just been said. And your mind is not supposed to understand what's just been said. It's not its job. It's off the hook. If you think about what I just said, it will go around in thought loop ad infinitum. But the information is there now in this fictional story of how to find the way back. A lot of frowny faces.
Mm-hmm.
After you've realized the story isn't true, it becomes rather humorous, rather funny. You know, that I believed I was a separate entity. Really, that thought really seemed very important. And then I believed I had to work my way back to reality. And I was convinced I wasn't already there. And because of that thought, I wasn't already back in and as the one. Because that was believed, I kept experiencing not being back. So I tried even harder to get back because I was convinced I wasn't there yet. And there's this I entity in the back of the car going, are we nearly there yet? On a journey that it can never arrive at, the I entity, because it is only thoughts. It never was an actual something. Amazing as it is to the I entity when it realizes it never really existed as anything other than thoughts. When it's willing to finally accept that, then it finds itself home immediately. Until it accepts that, it becomes convinced that it's not where the enlightened beings it sees around in the world are, and it's not experiencing what they are, so it mustn't be there yet. So satsang is for those that are willing to arrive, you know, to already be home even, not even to arrive at the end of a journey, to realize there never was a journey. The formless reality just has a very vivid imagination and dreams that it is all these separate beings. And in each dream, it seems completely real. It's really sure that it is what it thinks it is. But in the end, it finds happiness and peace and love and joy, so all ends well. And I don't mean to make light of the suffering that we all experience along the pathway, but it's only really if somebody tells you that your identity that is so sure exists, you're so sure exists, is not really there, then you've got a chance, haven't you? Otherwise, you'll keep trying to use that identity to get back home. And somebody has to say, you're making it all up. You know, somebody has to say, you never really were a separate being. And somebody has to say that everything you think you've experienced as a separate being was this great story of I that's pure fiction with, you know, heroes and villains and tragedy and love stories and plot twists and everything that, you know, goes into every great story. But it's still just a story. underneath it all, always, inside it all, always, is what you really are. It isn't arriving anywhere. So satsang is really the best questions to ask in satsang. Are really, I know what you said is true, but I can't quite understand that. I realize that myself. Can you help me? You know, how did you get from this place to this place, this understanding? Or I've seen what you said is true, but I keep forgetting, you know, something like that. Any question that comes from this I entity, how do I find my way back home? Because I'm sure I'm not there yet. I can't really help with that, although I do try every time. I'll be an imaginary character in your story, if you like, and help you find your way back home best I can. Until you realize I am you, and then it gets a lot simpler. Having said that, I will answer any questions and every question. So if anyone does want to ask. Yep.
Okay, so what you were just saying at the end there about questions, I am also an imaginary character. I'm quite aware of that. I don't know if you've ever seen the film Tropic Thunder, but Robert Downey Jr. has this very larger-than-life character. And it's a film about a film, and as soon as he steps off the set, he continues being the actor no matter what. And people are like, why are you still acting like that? Mm-hmm. I feel like that. I feel like everything you just said, I'm like, yeah, I know. But yeah, I'm persisting in acting as this character, and it's painful. I'm worrying about Christmas, about money, about the future, about security, stability, all these things on one side as my character, and on the other side I'm like, it's an absolute load of nonsense, and I know I can drop it, and I have often dropped it at any given moment. I just want to stop persisting with the act. I'm bored of it now.
Yeah, it gets very dull at the end, doesn't it?
It's dull, it's boring. I'm sick of my own drama. Most of it people don't see because it literally goes on between my ears. Bits leak out now and then.
I like the way you said that, yeah.
That's how it is, you know. If I suspect most people are the same, and but if their tape in their head was to play out loud, would probably be sectioned. Yeah. You know?
That's very true.
I'm just bored of it. I'm so bored of it, but yet I persist with it. So I don't really know what my question is, because I know you can't magic it away, and there's only me who can stop with the act. So I don't really know what I'm asking you.
You want the drama to stop? You want
I feel like, I don't. Yeah. I know what I am. So why the big act? Why bother persisting with something that, you know, I know suffering's an illusion anyway, but I'm bored of that too.
If you have no choice but to pick up the illusion, still, if that's an involuntary thing, then
feels like it.
I would have to say that you don't really know what you are yet.
I agree.
So the only answer can be to come to recognize clearly that the story is completely fictional, never happened. And the one trying to put down the story is also a work of fiction. What does it matter to you what your mind and body think and do? Even if mind's current obsession, the I entity's current obsession is trying to destroy itself, right, from the inside out. What does that matter to you?
It doesn't matter, but I'm so identified with it that I want to tell you that it's a boring film. But that would be the only the ego that would be saying that, because as you said at the very start, you could watch nothing for infinity and be quite happy with that.
Oh yeah, it's lovely. What is it that's identified with the story? So you're insisting that it's you.
Ego.
Can the formless consciousness identify with any story?
Yeah.
So which one are you then? Are you the one that's never been identified with anything? Or the one that's trying to shake off the drama, you know, the...
So I must be speaking from the point of view of an ego, from its own drama, because otherwise I won't even be asking the question.
But if the ego never existed, the I entity never existed, what does that leave you as? And is it your job to even let go of all this? You see, if you're telling me there's something you want to let go of or get rid of, it's because you really believe it's there still.
Yeah.
Really, really believe it's there still. And you're really, really trying hard to get rid of it or walk away from it or put it down.
Yeah.
Or surrender it, or all these spiritual ways to continue the story of I've seen that's not true now and I need to let it go. It's also fiction. It's fiction. Any journey that you have to come back to the one dies with that body and that brain. Because the one trying to get back, even the one that has seen none of this was ever true and now wants to just stop it all, is a thought imagined being. Can you still have this same problem you're sitting here with if you're everywhere? If you're looking through every set of eyes simultaneously and being every leaf and every amoeba and every gas giant and every particle of dust and every grain of sand and everything that was ever created will be created and is created in this moment, can you still have this problem?
No.
So which one are you going to be?
That one.
So what problems have you got now?
Only imaginary ones.
And how can you solve imaginary problems?
Just ignore them. Just see through them for what they are.
Mm-hmm. Really, really see through them. Really, really, really see that it was never possible for you to just be sat there.
I feel like a dog just chasing its tail.
Is that you, though? Have you ever seen that power that created the universe chase its tail? It's a bit of a paradox, but...
No, it already has all its plans and sort of laid out perfectly.
It doesn't really even have any plans because it can't think without a human brain. Can't plan.
Okay, patterns.
Yeah, I'll give you that one.
Like
Yeah.
fractals. It's already there.
There's nothing there at all. It's all formless. All of it is formless. The very idea that you have to let go of something, or that you want this other state to stop, indicates to me that you still believe it's real.
Must do.
If you can see that and understand what I just said then you know where to put your attention now. After you've seen enough times that a bad dream was just a bad dream, you will stop trying to get rid of it. And you'll focus more on getting into what you really are, noticing what you really are.
Yeah, rather than what I'm not.
Yeah. You can't get rid of what you're not because it never existed.
Yeah.
It never existed. It was sure that it did in thoughts, and it had all these experiences. And the last thing it's sure about is that it needs to get rid of illusion and go back to truth. Can it ever achieve that? Can you ever achieve getting rid of something that was never there? Just because you've experienced it in 3 dimensions, this bad dream, with all your senses and your thoughts, and everyone else around you agreed with what you thought was going on, doesn't mean it ever actually was going on. So what can you do to come out of that? Nothing. Nothing at all. And there's nothing you need to do to come out of it, is what's really important to get out of this. If I give you a technique or something to do, you'll go off doing it, and your I entity will completely have a ball over Christmas with something else to do, to escape from that which never existed. If a ghost walked through this room right now and said, if it said to you, I can't find where I live, can you show me my house? All you could really say to it would be, well, you don't really live anywhere because you're a ghost. You don't need a house. Don't even need to. There's nothing you could do to help that ghost at all, is there? And then thoughts come and sit down in the chair and ask the question, how do I stop imagining that I'm a separate being? But thoughts can't hear the answer, but you can. That you have never imagined anything. You are the one that's always just been watching. If it's not true without a body present, it's not true. End of story. All you can take out of this life is what was there before the body appeared. And if it's not true when the waking state disappears, it's not true. Do you have to find your way home in deep sleep?
Got to find my way on first, full stop, I'm already there. So
then this whole entire imaginary, there once was an ego, and now I've seen it's not real. And now I've got to stop energizing it somehow.
Yeah.
Is the ego talking?
Yeah.
So the only choice you have then is to just refuse to play with it.
Just move my attention.
Move your attention to what's real. Yeah. And leave it there as if it's the most important thing to do. The moment you start to use thought in this process now, you begin to imagine problems that you need to solve.
Yeah. Many. Yeah.
And every single person that I've helped come to a really clear seeing has sat and asked me the same question. How do I stop doing this? I've seen it's not real. How do I stop? Yeah. And it's very frustrating when you're told there's nothing that anyone can do to help you now.
Part of me feels like, well, is that just it? And I know you could say it doesn't matter anyway, but am I just like, is this body just doomed for the next 50 or 60 years to just go on with its trauma and then die and then go, right, okay, let's do something more fun now? No. I told you there was a happy ending. When you really see that there's nothing you need to do, that all of this has been made up, and you stop your own journey, then your body and mind begin to reflect that too, that they've got nothing really to do, although they do a lot. They move around and function as they're supposed to. The drama is still because you somewhere believe still inside your being that you have somewhere to go, something to finish. But that is the last part. The last chapter of the story of I is this. How do I stop this ego drama that's going on? Well, be yourself and see if it's still a problem. See, ego says you need to finish this before you can be yourself. Every teacher says you've got to be yourself before you can finish this. It's the other way around in reality. What does the formless consciousness that you really are have to do? Nothing.
What does it want to do?
Nothing.
What does it need to finish?
Nothing.
Where does it want to get to?
It's already there.
What level of consciousness is it trying to achieve?
Oh, well, consciousness is ever expanding. So, infinite.
And is it trying to dissolve the ego?
No.
You're really sure about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's it doing?
It's watching me trying to. It's watching a crazy person try to dissolve itself.
Technically, it's watching 7.5 billion versions of that.
Yeah. It's a hell of a film.
No wonder it gets a bit bored after a while. There's only one channel. The story of I keeps playing over and over again. So you be like that consciousness. If it's not true for the consciousness, it's not true for you. And as much as we want to scratch that itch of doing something spiritually, you have to just learn that's not my issue, actually. You will never fix all of your drama and problems and get to the end of that. You can only come out of it and see, every time I try to stop it, I just make it worse.
Create more.
Yeah. I imagine a division inside myself that then I really live out truth versus illusion. And then I'll be even more convinced I have to get back to truth because I'm experiencing illusion. So if you can see that the formless consciousness is doing nothing at all, and more importantly, that nothing ever happened to it. In the world of phenomena and form, it's always going to seem like there's a journey. In thought, there's always going to be a journey. And you can never get to the end of that journey in thought. So if you recognize that, and you make a stand as the formless awareness, the real self, which can forever imagine itself to be someone, but you're a little bit bored of that now. So stop imagining and be what you really are. End all process. Just step out of all processes that you think you're involved in. Have the courage to just go cold turkey with it. There's countless plates spinning in your ego, and the only one you haven't let drop is I need to bring my ego to an end plate, right? But if you just walk away, it will fall off by itself. Yeah.
I like that idea.
Anything I tell you to do now is going to make the problem continue, because you'll imagine that you can do something spiritually to stop all of this. The only thing you can come to recognize is you're only kind of coming out of that sleep state. You're not quite, the last little bit of the dream is still being believed. And that's it, there's something that this egoic drama. And it's the funniest thing ever that when you finally, okay, I'm just going to be what I've seen myself to be. And any voice that says anything other than that, I'm going to ignore inside, you know. And suddenly the ego just goes poof. Just like that, because there's nobody sustaining it anymore. Even the one that's trying to get rid of it is sustaining it.
Could you say that bit again, please?
Yeah. The last little bit of the story of I, the dream, is that you need to get rid of the ego, right? It seems to make sense because it's there and it's making a whole load of noise and drama, as you said. And after you decide to go cold turkey, anything that says you need to, you should, you haven't done, you must, then you just, nope. And the only thought you will allow yourself is I am, right? Then the ego will disappear, it'll just disintegrate by itself. Because you've been the one holding it together with your belief that you need to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So you can never really fix that. So you replace the I need to do, I'm doing thoughts with I am. Just I am. Anything that arises in your consciousness that isn't there all the time is not true, which includes the ego. It's gone at night time, isn't it? It's gone even while you're really listening. It's gone in deep meditation. It's just gone, you know.
Goes when I'm having fun, I've noticed.
Yeah.
It just disappears.
So just have some fun being yourself and leave it alone. It's one of those where you're so powerful as the infinite reality The moment you imagine you've got some more work to do, you'll have plenty more work to do. And you can't get out of that by doing that work. You can just step back and be what you really are. What does that mean? It means letting go of all thoughts. Whatever is suggested to you, then you just go, no thanks, I'm not buying that today. Because something inside is really sure that you have to stop this drama, that you're the one that's your job. You're the one that's got to sort this out, and if you don't do it, you're never going to be happy. Seems very, very real. Are you willing to disbelieve even that for a moment and just see, what if I am already absolutely perfect? What if I am already completely beyond any harm or suffering or change or any of that? What if I never actually even created an ego that needs to be dissolved or destroyed? And everything we did in the Dissolving the Ego course was to bring your attention away from that and to the real self. And when you see that's the only thing you can do, that you can't do anything to get rid of this fog of illusion because it's not really there. It's not really there. The only thing you can do is to consciously be yourself. What you've seen yourself to be, that which isn't wanting anything or needing to do anything. Yeah. Too simple for most people. But when you're ready to hear it, it's like, oh, this is not my problem even to fix.
It makes a shopping list of life from far further than my hands can reach to very little to actually.
If it's only present, if whatever problem you've got, especially your spiritual problems, is only present in the waking state, it's not really true.
It's all nonsense.
Because the waking state comes and goes, and so does the body that is, having this issue. Even this greatest of problems is still completely fictional. Even this final problem, and there's nothing I can tell you to fix it. You just have to see it's not your problem. It's somebody's problem, and you're not anyone in particular. And you just do the cold turkey.
Yeah. I'll give it a go.
Ego says, yes, but that's not going to fix this problem out here.
Yeah. Oh, I won't say I'll give it a go. I'll say I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that.
Make a stand. Plant your flag. You reach the summit of the mountain. Don't go back down again now. Because you go back down again, it gets all foggy at the bottom. Stand at the top as your real self and refuse. Even when somebody says, your house is on fire, go sort it out. You go, no, I'm staying up here in the clear heights of my being where I can't get confused. Just as that. And anything that thought suggests to you or ego suggests to you at that point, it is clearly, or it becomes to be much more clearly understandable that it's just nothing to do with you. If you imagine it is, you create a whole universe of the beings and an endless journey back to the one. All you can do is see, I'm already at the top of the mountain, and I always have been. Never went down, only in imagination. So what do you need to do to get back to the top, or to stay at the top? It's nonsense, isn't it?
Just stay there being me, just watching all the madness below.
Yeah, and you refuse to buy a thought, right? Not even if they're 3 for 2, right? You just, because they're like 1,000 for 2 out of the thoughts. You buy these 2, I'll give you 1,000 extra free. Anything that isn't true in the waking state, when the waking state goes, is not true.
That's a good.
So anything that ego suggests to you or mind suggests to you now, do I have this problem when I'm asleep or when my body's dead? No. Okay.
I'll go with dead because I can actually worry in my sleep. I know that.
Not in deep sleep. Not in deep
No,
sleep.
probably not in deep sleep. Yeah. But I'll go with dead then.
I'm not saying the waking state is nonsense, because only in the waking state can we have this conversation. Can you talk to yourself clearly and come to understand?
Sure, we've had conversations in dreams before, but okay.
Over eons, we've been conversing like this in different countries in the world, in different bodies, finally, when the one is ready to hear that there's nothing for it to do, it will stand firm in that. Not that there's not only nothing you can do, but also nothing you need to do. This problem isn't yours.
If this is just a random aside, something that's popped up a few times. If I, as the everything, realised that it was all illusion, would not everything just collapse? Like literally the entire universe collapse?
That would be true if it was ever really created. If it ever really made all these forms.
Well, my inkling was that
the illusion is that the forms are real and separate and exist independently from their source. But if you see shapes in the clouds or something, just because you see their clouds doesn't mean the shape disappears.
Okay, so the illusion kind of stands on its own.
The illusion continues, but you know it's illusion, and it's fun.
Yeah, that's true.
Like I can look like all of this.
Yeah.
Next moment I'll look like something completely different. Yeah. I can look like whatever the universe looks like. If you could take a snapshot, that's what I look like. You know, because I'm not a woman. I'm not sitting here as a woman. You know, so if somehow you had managed to spin all these forms out of you, and you realized, but I'm none of the forms, then technically the forms might poof.
Yeah, like go back to a singularity or something.
Actually here.
Yeah, it already is a singularity.
The macrocosm of the one imagines itself to be a limited being, and that condenses down into a physical limited body. But it's still the one condensed down, vibrating slower, looking like a human body. It's never actually a human body. So when that's clear, then play, you know, have fun making shapes, but no, they're just shapes. They're not really actual things. Like a mirage, it really looks like a mirror. It looks like water when you at some distance. As soon as you get close to it, it's gone. But find these things out for yourself.
Okay.
Right. Refuse to budge an inch from I am. That's the only thing that's the highest nourishment.
Okay, I'll do that.
I need, I want, I should, I shouldn't, I must, I can't. Then it's a parcel coming. It only needs to be Christmas presents. It only needs to be seen that none of that was ever real, and you walk away. If you're still trying to get rid of it, you haven't fully seen it was never real. You with me?
Yeah. So
you don't wait for you to don't wait for a complete understanding of what I've just said before you apply it. The complete understanding of what I've just said will come after you apply it.
See that,
yeah. Ego says, but I want to understand it before I apply it.
Yeah. And then I just need to get on with applying. And,
you are. It's just there's some loyalty going back to the phenomenality.
Yeah.
You know, of thoughts trying to get some awareness. Yeah. Very good.
Okay, thank you.
But nothing to do over Christmas.
Yes.
At all. Anyone else like to ask? Hello.
Last night, I had this realization last night that pain's not real.
Pain is not real.
Yeah, all these years and years I've been possessed by pain and suffering. It served its purpose at the time. It was unconscious. It was playing a part in the game. And over the last 4 weeks, it's really been playing up and it's really making life tough. And it's like, my God, is this ever going to go? I've been having all these realizations. And it's still there thinking, it's in game, you can survive all this lot. And it's like, oh my God, it's going to win now. I'm going to be done forever. It's just going to get worse. I can't see a way out of it. It doesn't matter how many realizations I have because it's just going to somehow survive all that lot.
And the story of I then becomes a tragedy. And then, you know, it takes a downturn.
Yeah. And then last night, I just, what you were saying, just slightly took inside me. And I could see it was just a belief. I believe I've created suffering, I believed it into existence that I suffer. And in reality, it doesn't exist. It's mind-blowing to see that.
Yeah.
I just talking to that person there, it's just like, my God, all these years I thought it's been real. And last night I just saw it. I didn't have to think about it. All these years I've been trying to work it out, where it's coming from and what it's all about. And there's all these therapies and all this stuff about it, and it's dissolving it and pain body. It's a lot of crap. It's absolute crap.
The greatest work of fiction that ever.
And when it come on the light, it was so simple. It's just a bloody belief. I've just been believing this into existence.
The moment you believe that you were a separate being or are a separate being, all of that comes into existence.
Suffering part of it, it comes with it. Yeah, it's part of the package. Because to me, it's just a fantasy. I fantasize them into existence, and on top of that, I fantasize suffering into existence. It's absolutely mind blowing. What this what we're doing to ourselves. It's mind blowing. It's pretty hellish. Evil exists. I don't deny it. It exists relatively. It exists. I know that.
Yeah.
Even though I've seen it through that, I know it still exists until it doesn't. It's totally real until it's not.
So now that seeing happens, and there's two things you can do with that seeing now. The first thing is, which usually happens, the I entity that doesn't exist grabs a hold of that and says, I've seen it now.
Yeah, I'm getting that now. It's playing with it a bit.
I've seen that now. It's none of it existed. There's nothing for me to do.
And that's what happens then. I just get to another trap and I see something, get ego tries to hijack it.
Or option 2, which is highly recommended. Option 1 doesn't really exist, by the way. Option 2, although it seemed to. Option 2 is to be the seeing and to not even really value what you're seeing, to just be the seeing itself, to which even all these wonderful epiphanies are happening. What can this seeing do about anything if it's just seeing? Nothing at all. There is nothing other than the seeing about you. All you have to do is not form yourself into a shape around what you've seen. And never, ever, ever to assume, I know now, I've seen it. Because that is immediately making yourself into something that has seen and recognized the truth. Yes, there's a profound seeing, and yes, it wipes away most of the illusion. But there will always be more to see. And at some point, all of the illusion is wiped out in a seeing that is so powerful. Until then, there's countless seeings. Each time it's clearer and clearer and clearer. And then even eventually you don't value even what is seen, because the realization happens that these realizations are happening to my imaginary thought self. And that the formless awareness isn't having any epiphanies even. It just is. When you realize that, there's very nice epiphanies happen to your mind, your thought entity. So just to guard against, and I'm only saying this because we all do it, just to guard against taking what we've seen and going, that's it now.
Oh, no, I'm not saying
because
that.
it will feel like I cannot possibly see it more powerfully than that. But the very moment you don't grab it, it will present itself again even clearer. Each time it does, it wipes out all the history of I, the story of I, and leaves nothing behind except itself, just the clear seeing.
It's a big one, though, to see that something's illusion. It's a big one. Out of all things I've had, that's the biggest one I've seen so far.
Yeah, and they will get bigger.
Because that makes my life a bit easier now. But the me's using that, obviously. It's going to be saying, obviously that's going to be easy now because it's illusion.
Don't worry what the me's doing. Just worry what you're doing. Where are you planting your flag?
I can't suffer now because I've seen it.
And you never did.
Well, no,
that's how the seeing will unfold now. It goes from none of this is real, and then I never suffered. I'm not suffering, and then I never suffered.
It's still a challenge, it's off again. It's going to still be everyday human challenges. I'm not saying that's gone. It's just a suffering.
There'll just be experiences happening to the mind and body, and you'll recognize that you've never been involved in that. Just to guard against the tendency that we all have to take what we've seen and think we've arrived.
No, I don't think I've arrived.
Because it will seem like, it will feel, some of the seeings will be so powerful, they'll wipe out your entire sense of self. you know, and you'll think, well, there's nothing left to do now.
No, I usually get what's going to be next now to this. That's what I'm getting now. And I'm seeing things more now. It's just a seeing more.
Yeah.
Before it's been very intellectual. I used to intellectualize it all the time. And now it's just
that'll go on. Your mind's
Yeah.
going to try to understand what you've had revealed,
Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with that.
It's mind blowing because when you can't see it, you can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
And you think you know it forever, and then the light just comes on, and it's just so simple. It just evaporates like that.
Yeah.
And it's just a human concept. I was getting it. It's just so simple.
Yeah.
So it can make the close so real. It's mind blowing.
Because it's the infinite reality, imagining.
It's so powerful, isn't it?
Everything.
It can make it real, but so totally real.
Yeah.
And then until it's not real. So evil is real until it's not real.
So
suffering is real until
if you stay open as you are now, if you stay as you are now, what more is there to see? What else is there to see about myself? Then you'll never ever, no matter what happens to mind and body, you'll never be able to suffer. So stay open. Recognize that each seeing is going to feel complete and final.
Mm-hmm.
Every seeing, every big epiphany I had, I was sure for a little while afterwards that was it.
Oh, no, I've still got fear of death and things, so I've still got
there's more to see.
So I've not got there yet. No, yeah. I think when the fear of death goes, I think I'm getting pretty close to it once that goes.
You're never going to get close to it.
No,
You're never going to get close to it. I need to destroy that. I'm going to give you a Christmas present now. You're never going to get close to anything.
So
just
even
rub out that imaginary line that is in our consciousness of when I get to this imaginary line, I'm enlightened.
Now the game is now thinking, well, I've seen that now, but I've got fear of death now, so I've got to see through this one now. So
if there is any fear at all, or any negative emotion, or any suffering at all, there is more to see.
Yes, I've got more to see.
At that point, by the time all that's gone, because each one is more powerful, each seeing wipes out more illusion. Eventually, it wipes out all illusion because they're exponentially powerful. The more open you are, the more you'll see. End of story. And then at some point, all of it will go. But by that point, you'll be so in love with staying open and seeing, and effortlessly having revealed to you what is really true. But you'll know yourself to be the witness of even that. You know, even every time your mind sees something, it'll be sure it's arrived at this finish line or is getting close. You know. And when I realized I couldn't suffer anymore, I never had, and all fear had gone, still this little voice wanted to say, we're nearly there now, you know. But I just didn't. I know what happens when I buy that voice, you know. So stay open, keep seeing, never assume there's any, you know, you've reached the end of anything, and you'll be happy, and you'll very quickly reach an end.
Right.
Good stuff.
Right.
Come to you next. You're straight in there, you know.
Well, I can. Before anybody else. It's. I suppose what I'm wanting to ask is the place of will. And is it an ego thing? And is that an imaginary thing? Is will an imaginary thing?
Just explain to me what you mean by will, so that I'm clear.
It feels like I've got a choice, and I know you've said in the past, I always have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's saying, it feels like when I'm walking around, I'm still very much lost in identification, in thought, and I'm closed. And you used the word open and seeing. And it feels to me like I am on a journey, and the journey is seeking.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hearing you saying that's part of the illusion.
It's really annoying, isn't it? It's really annoying when somebody says that. I remember being so annoyed.
It's just like, well, where do I go then? You know, because it's like, it's a paradox. Because on the one hand, I spend most of my time lost in identification, in thought, and naturally in thought. It seems to me the illusion, which is not an illusion, as you say, is being reinforced all the time by everything around me.
And so it feels like, yes, I've got a choice, but how do I remember in each moment that I have that choice, that I can be open rather than closed? And on the one hand, I can see about myself that I'm happiest when I'm just being, actually. The musts and the shoulds and so on that are telling me I need to be doing.
Yeah.
I prefer to be being.
Yeah.
I feel most comfortable in that. And so that almost sounds like what you're saying, just be, that's it. You know, there's nowhere to go, there's nothing to become, just be. Like, yeah, great, you know. But then, hang on, I'm in this world. There's things that I've got to do, whether I like it or not. There's things to be sorted out.
What have you got to do as the being?
Well, it feels like, on the one hand, there's like big questions like, can the perceiver be perceived? You know, it's like, right, there's this, and you know, I am the knower. So like, right, it's really easy. But then I forget. It's like, yes.
So do you have to remember? Are you the one forgetting? Really, really, really important to really see the answer to that question. There's obviously, in all of us, a huge assumption. I'm the one forgetting because I keep experiencing that. But if we're willing to question that, could this be also part of this imaginary story, which seems to be the theme of this morning? Then there's an opening for a huge, huge thunderbolt of understanding. That sounded a bit, sorry, it's not going to come blast you or anything. The moment we're willing to question, do I need to remember? Because on the one hand, I seem to experience just being, and it's beautiful. And there's nothing for me to do there, right? And then everything's just happening by itself in that place, and it's fantastic. And then I seem to forget, and I'm identifying with thoughts again. And I'm off back in the separate self and lost for however long I'm lost. So it really seems to be true that I need to remember to just be. It really seems true, doesn't it? Right where you are in your journey.
Just to clarify what I mean by, you know, I can be, but I can be lost. You know, and be lost in thought, you know, and be lost in identification most of the time. But what I mean by, there's the difference between that being and the being which is open is witnessing. Because when it feels like I'm witnessing, I'm remembering, and it feels like then I'm not lost and I'm not identified. I'm still being, but I'm being the witness. And so I'm conscious of every moment and being in the now. And that feels like that's me not being identified in illusion. It feels like I've stepped back. And so that's more real than being lost in identification. So I've spent a lot of time thinking that meditation is helping me in that, because it does. Meditation seems to help me. If I have a good meditation in the morning, then I find during the day I'm much more coming into the present moment and witnessing myself doing whatever it is I'm doing. And I tend less to get caught by thoughts that take me off into, you know, just whatever. And that feels that I'm at that point further along in the journey of seeking to become.
You're getting there. You're getting there. You're almost there.
This paradox, and so you know, it's, I suppose it's just a different type of illusion. It's not, you know, because I hear what you're saying about there's nothing other than what is.
Yeah.
You know, it's just isness and suchness. There's nothing else, whatever form it might take, and whatever my mind or my being is identified with or not identified with.
Mm-hmm.
All of that is illusion, because there is only just isness. So I've answered my own question. I don't know. You know, it's just like, how do you seek without seeking? You know, how what is there to do? You know, it's kind of
instead of trying to get somewhere, that energy can be, you know, the drive of the ego, which is always trying to. There's nothing wrong with the ego, but we're in this room because we're watching this because we've had enough of that. So instead of that drive to get somewhere, to some imaginary moment where I feel how I want to feel, then that drive can be taken and put into seeing what is already here. You know, seeing what you already are. And if there is some toing and froing going on, then there is a deeper seeing that can happen, in which that is seen to be just a shift of attention. And the seeing becomes clearer that I am the one watching. Sometimes I'm watching nothing at all. Sometimes I'm watching thoughts and really, you know, the resulting experiences and beliefs and emotions of those thoughts and the world out there and everything. But I am the same, completely unchanged, whether I'm watching thoughts or watching nothing. I am the same. I am unchanged. It's not a process that I am doing when I grab a hold of thoughts, and I need to undo that or stop doing it to remain as myself. It can be more clearly seen that myself is myself no matter what is going on, whether I've got a body, whether I'm thinking or not thinking. You know, whatever is happening is just happening in front of the seer that isn't affected by any of it. Something is affected by identifying with thoughts. Something is, but not you. Clear as mud.
well, for me, it brings up the question of then why do I need to read your books? Then why do I need to come to satsang? Why do I need to meditate? Why do I need to do anything? You know, it's just like there's nothing to do.
There isn't anything to do. And in satsang, the seer is coming to see that it's only ever seen, that it's never done, that it's never become anything. You know, that's the clarity that will come as you read the books and meditate and do all the other stuff and end up in satsang. And the irony is, you come to realize I didn't really need any of that. You know, I didn't need any of this at all, because I have never become anything. I am that formless ground from which all these shapes appear, all of this, including thoughts. That becomes clearer and clearer the more you sit, and the more you sit inside your own self, not literally sit, but so in satsang there isn't a doing or a becoming. There's just this clearer and clearer seeing of what you really are, clearer and clearer understanding of what you actually are. And we need to associate with beings that have done that already, because they are the only ones that can stop you when you're about to go off down a cul-de-sac in your consciousness. You know, things that I can do to get back to myself. It seems to be this road in front of you, and you'll carry on walking down it until you meet someone that says you're already home. You know, you're standing inside your own house. So the satsang will help you slow down from these ideas that I'm doing, and it'll help you come to realization of only ever the pure experiencing itself. Sometimes that pure experiencing is watching an idea of someone and all of its life and its journey back to awakening. And sometimes it's watching nothing at all. But the seer of that is unchanged. if there is a witnessing that's going on, where there's a to and fro going on, is there something even more behind that that is watching this to and fro? Is it really you that's toing and froing anyway, or is it your attention? It's really important, because I, as the formless reality, look through a human body. I can either look at what I think I'm seeing, I can imagine there's a world out here, or I can see there's really nothing here, and I am unchanged either way. When I think there's a world out here, I'll get caught up in all these thoughts about it and experiences that come from that. When I'm clear afterwards that none of that was ever so, I am still exactly as I am and I have always been. So if there's any idea still that you are changing, sometimes I can just be, and then sometimes not. And what do I need to do to just be? Or is it really that you are just sitting inside yourself and your attention is going to thoughts sometimes and having all the resulting emotions and experiences, and then sometimes it turns around to look back at itself. The attention looks at its source and goes, wow, that's so peaceful. And then attention goes back to thoughts, as it does, because that's what attention does. It flip-flops all over the place. And attention sees all these thoughts. I'm getting somewhere. I'm almost there. I'm nearly home. I've seen what I am. I'm, getting it. And that feels, to the mind and body, that feels yucky. The thinkingness of it all. So it turns around again and goes back to the being, just the pure being that's watching. If you identify as the attention, you'll be constantly going backwards and forwards, in, out, shake it all about. And then eventually, that's nothing to do with me. I am the seer of even where my attention is focused. More and more it's focused on my real self, and less on what I thought I was out there, the separate being, the I entity.
So there's a difference between, because I recognise that my attention is usually captured, and it's either
very captured by thoughts, attention, isn't it?
It's either captured by thought internally or it's captured by something external.
Yeah.
But it's flipping backwards and forwards.
All it can do is look at something, a thought, an experience, right? It needs something to look at.
But it also feels like I have a choice, and sometimes I can witness what the attention is doing. So I can witness that it's actually being captured in thought.
Yeah.
And I can either stop the thought or just witness that I'm thinking, or I can witness that I'm captured by something external. But I've stepped back because I'm actually conscious that I'm witnessing what my attention's captured on, so I'm not captured.
Mm-hmm.
But you're saying there's actually a place behind that, and there's a place that's watching the witnessing.
Yeah. Right now, if I was to give you this long, detailed explanation, and you clearly paid attention all the way through, and you could recite it back to me verbatim after, I'm not going to ask you to do that, don't worry. You could say, yes, I got that, all of it completely. Or the opposite experience that attention can have, because it's totally present, focused on the beingness. The opposite experience is you could be so busy, lost in thoughts that you didn't hear a single word I said. Like, just not heard it at all, and perhaps heard some version of what you thought I was saying in your head. You could tell me either one of those. Right, yep, I got it completely. I listened to everything you said. Or no, can you say it again? I tried to listen, but mind was going da 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 da, and off I went with it. You can tell me both of those. You can tell me both of those, so you can't be the one that's experiencing those options. You can't be. If you were the one that was lost in thoughts and identified with thoughts, you would have no sense of time or experience or anything except for those thoughts. You would be gone completely. You would, when I finished talking, you'd be like, oh, I'm back again. And I'm listening. There would be a discontinuity. But you are the witness which can even tell me whether attention was identified or not.
Yeah.
Very subtle, so subtle, and we all identify as the attention at first. We all identify. Sometimes I'm just being that presence, sometimes I'm just being that ego, and how the hell do I stop going there and I want to stay here where it feels nice? But you can see both of those states. You can see when attention is looking at nothing in particular and how nice that feels. And you can also see when attention is looking at thoughts and how crappy that feels. So you must be removed from that situation. Thought is convinced it is that. Thought will always try to tell you that you are that which is flip-flopping. If you don't buy that for a minute, if you just don't buy that you've even got that choice, that even that choice isn't yours, which seems like the holiest of choices, the most sensible of choices, to want to stay as a presence and stop going back into illusion, then you've got a chance of actually having it revealed to you that you are something way more subtle than even that. And there's an opening then, because it has to, we identify less and less with phenomenality. I know I'm not this body, I know I'm not my thoughts, I know I'm not my emotions, I know I'm not my experiences, I'm not my memories. And it's coming, the formless one is coming to see its formless nature, but it still picks up subtle things like I am the attention for a while, because it seems to be experiencing that. And again, if that you isn't present when the waking state has gone, it can't be the real you.
You say that again.
If that, the you that seems to be making a choice between presence and person, or identified or unidentified, whichever, then it cannot be the real you, because it disappears. You don't have this problem in deep sleep. And you can't have this problem without a human body. So as tempting as it is to see, and this is the last place we all identify as a something, much less subtle than a human body, and much more subtle than a human body, much more subtle than that it's the finest remnants, the trickiest remnants of the egoic way of thinking, is that I am the one that's flipping over back to mostly being that awareness, mostly being that presence, making the journey back. And at some point I'll arrive at 100% of the time, clock time, I'll be myself, and 0% of the time I'll be identified with thoughts. It seems really, really true for a long time. Eventually, when you realize you can never quite get it back to 100%, and the more you try, the more it flips back to 25%. Right?
Right, yeah, because it does feel that way. It feels like, if I get to the point where I'm witnessing 100% of the time, then that has to be better than being flip-flopping or identified and so on.
But
you're saying that's not true.
It's still a subtle identity in which you are changing and becoming.
Yeah.
Can you see that?
Yes.
So it ultimately can't be the most real you.
Yeah.
And if you can see that, then you're already coming out of it, that there's something even behind that that isn't changing at all.
Right.
And this is where it goes from presence to absolute, the absolute reality that just is.
Right.
The isness that you were talking about, that isn't becoming more aware, it isn't becoming more awake, it isn't even becoming less identified with thoughts.
Right. It feels like I don't know anything about that.
And you can't. And it's wonderful, because you can't do anything with it. But you can want to, it's enough what you've seen today. It's enough that you are already willing to listen to me when I say that you're not that one that's flip-flopping back and forth. The awake-o-meter that I'm trying to get to 100%, where I'm only focused on formlessness and not form, that isn't me.
Because in one way it feels like, it occurred to me earlier on while you were talking, about the fairy tale, the story, I thought, well, what's the difference between me being an atheist and what you're talking about? It's like there's nothing else. There's just, it is. So it's like, well, what's the difference between being an atheist and that then? It's like, because it's been the pull all my life. It's like, the belief. The belief in whatever you call it, God or something greater, the presence or whatever, that's pulled me, that pull that's still there. But like the
atheist is sure that God doesn't exist, right?
Sorry, say that again.
The atheist, it's the agnostic isn't sure. Atheist is sure God doesn't exist, but there isn't such a thing.
Yeah, this is it. That's it.
All you see is it. And the self-realized being is absolutely sure that it's God saying God doesn't exist. Which is quite a comedy in the end. This being that is God has become absolutely certain that God doesn't exist. And that's a logical conclusion for that being at that point, because it's only able to use thought and experience to understand whether God exists or not. And you can't find that God in experience or thought, only from what is before that. So it comes to the conclusion it just isn't there. It just isn't there because it's looking for a form, it's looking for a shape, it's looking for a somethingness about God, isn't it?
So you're saying that an atheist is like the height of cosmic irony.
Yeah, and it's also the height of, I don't mean to knock anyone that is an atheist, but the atheist is trying to understand it through thought. And it's perhaps sometimes the most, right before agnosticism, I really am not sure if God exists. For me, my journey, I was atheist at one point, ironically, which is just hilarious now. I was sure God didn't exist because all of these forms are coming and going. How can that be the eternal? How can that be? And I came to realize that what I meant by my atheistic belief was that I can disprove the existence of what God is supposed to be in the world of phenomena. There is nothing in the world of phenomena that stays permanently. So in that way, the atheist is right. There is nothing such as God in all this phenomena, Does that help that? The one realizes that it can't find itself in phenomena and says, therefore, it doesn't exist. The one being, which seems to be a logical conclusion until you learn how to look without the senses and the mind. And it's, I was here all along. Ta-da! Very good. Very good. Yeah. Remember, there's nothing to do.
I know. That's going to be quite ironic when I ask the question.
I think I know what you're going to say. Go on.
Well, I've been listening to people and the just being bit that I've been talking about, and I know what that's like.
We've all been there.
Yeah, like when we were walking the dog the other day, and I was just taking the ball for my dog, or back our daughter's dog, and that's all that. And it was just like I was just being, and there was nothing going on. Having said that, you give me a self-inquiry kind of question to ask myself when I believe certain thoughts and beliefs I have about pain that I experience. So that is a doing, I guess. Or is it a doing? But the question is, I've been at the moment I buy in. There's that moment, isn't there, when
the belief pops in, the thought pops in your head. I may have a little think I'm going to get pain. And so I've been asking that question at the very moment it's there, you know, that thought is there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in Aldi this morning, pushing around, and
There seems to be a lot of doing this in a supermarket right before Christmas, isn't there?
And
a lot of other beings.
Yeah. And the question you left me with is, what am I actually doing? Which is kind of
interesting in the middle of Aldi.
You know that. And at that point, and I have to ask it a few times sometimes, but I'm finding that there is, when I'm doing that, there is usually a sense of more energy flowing, not just adrenaline or anything, but it's like something seems to happen energetically.
A lighter feeling, yeah.
But then there's a little bit of kind of like, is it going to work? It's not going to work. Is it going to work? Is it going to work? And we're not going to experience the pain. This is what Helen has said, left me. Is it going to work? You know. I just wonder what is happening with that, because when the energy gets felt, I have a little bit of feeling that I'm like, you've used the expression before, like a rabbit caught in headlights kind of thing. I'm kind of flipping around, and I don't feel very, I won't say peaceful, but it's kind of, I feel a little bit disturbed, I guess. But some of it's a good feeling. But yet it disturbs me a little bit that I'm not I'm not just being anymore, if you know what I mean. So I was wondering what was kind of going on.
So what is your question? I tried to pick one out of there, but I'm a bit lost, sorry.
I guess that's just a ramble, isn't it, really?
Usually I can kind of, and just today it's not really working.
Should I keep asking the question? Because there's a lot of it this morning about being you already are this, and let go of all the questions, and just be, which I can do, but asking the question appeared to be helping with the pain not getting as bad.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying what to do next, basically. Do I carry on keeping with the question?
I would stay with the question.
Yeah.
If there's still a lot of pain comes up at times,
yeah,
then the question can do a bit more work for you.
Yeah.
The question can do more work, not you.
Right.
So both. Should I ask the question or not? Yes.
Yeah.
It's one of those really annoying things that teachers say when they, just completely refuse to pick a side, because you're not asking anyway. It's your mind that's asking, and your mind and body are feeling the results. You're the one just watching the question, and even this will come to be obvious from it. What am I really doing actually? Eventually it'll be just stunningly clear, nothing at all. Nothing at all. Not even self-inquiry, not even meditation, not even contemplation question. Until that's clear, keep asking the question. Right. Keep doing that. But it's layers of subtlety. We might be not identified anymore with I'm digging this hole in my garden, something that my body's doing. But we might still be wrapped up in layers of subtle identity. I'm doing this journey. I'm doing better on this journey. I'm not doing as good. I'm doing a self-inquiry. I'm doing contemplation. All these layers of subtle identity that remain at the end, where we imagine we have to do something, and then we have to imagine we have to do something to undo what we think we've done already, and all of that. The pain will be your reminder to keep asking the question. So if the pain still comes, then still ask the question. And you'll know when you can stop asking it, because you'll realize you never asked it, or the pain will stop completely.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's one of those where the more you realize you're not doing anything, the more tempting it will be to drop the question. And then, but you might know that you're not doing anything, but some parts of the outskirts of your being, the suburbs of your being, are still buying that idea. So you have to keep taking that medicine until it's completely gone. You got rid of the squatters from your being that are doing a lot of damage, you know. Are you with me?
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
And when you're asking the question, you cannot be believing any thoughts at that time, which is why the energy surges, because you're not limiting yourself at all when you ask a question for that moment. So it's even wonderful in itself just to ask the question, because even the answers become irrelevant in the end. Asking a question is not a doing, it's a seeing. It's looking in the mirror into. There's nobody doing anything. Even asking a question is not a doing. That might not be 100% clear as yet, but it will get clearer.
So asking a question isn't actually a doing.
No. Which answers the other question. I think it was Richard that said, you know, why on earth am I in satsang then and doing all this spiritual work? It's all just a seeing, isn't it? That's seeing clearer and clearer and clearer. Seeing through the fog more each time, cutting back on the fog and naturally seeing. Each time you ask that question, you'll have an experiential answer that'll begin to override your tendency to think that you're doing. The only doingness that actually causes doo-doo is the idea that you're doing something spiritually now. That you have problems that you need to get rid of. I'm looking at you over there. How can be everyone today, right? It's all the same question. So that's the only area we still identify. We've discarded most of our identity, and we've discarded most of our I entity, but we keep a hold of the I that's doing this more and more progressively and doing it better and almost there now and actually is there now and all of that stuff. It's still a doingness it imagined, isn't it? Reality, the silence, it's like saying that the space in this room is doing something. It just is, isn't it? It's not even having to be. It can't not be. It just is. That becomes clearer. And in that space of you being, a question arises, what am I really doing? And mind has loads of epiphanies, and the body experiences the resulting piece of those epiphanies. And you just remain as you are. So you could say thought is having a seeing. So stay with the question. It's been improving since you've been asking it.
Yeah, it still comes on, but it's generally last few days.
Everyone has one area of their life where we're squeezed right until the end to ask the question right until we don't need to ask it anymore. And that's just that's my area. You know, whether you call it karma or whatever it is, you know, that's just and you can tell when you can stop, because you clearly recognize the phenomena of the pain isn't occurring anymore. And I've really had this clear seeing that nothing is going on at all. I never did anything, not even to create this universe. I didn't even do that. It's just a mirage appearing inside me.
Cool. Thank you.
Got time for one more if anyone wants to ask. Yeah. There's nothing you can ask now because I'm going to say the same thing.
No. Have experienced lessening of a drive of doing things.
Yeah.
However,
and then
I still experience negative emotions and sometimes quite outbursts of them, which I don't like. And there's a my look going on, but there is nothing to do and you're already that.
And there's
And
obviously something to do. Look
and
at the
it's
temper tantrum I just had, you know. There's something to do.
and then there's a worry that if I don't do something,
Yeah.
that's not gonna go away and not gonna get better. Because I think this idea that it be this serene being and nothing touches you, and you start morning nicely, ta 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 ta, and then you realize as you're dropping your daughter off, she forgot clarinet for today. And it's a poof, like the base is shattered. and all these emotions raging inside. I go, "Ooh, where is my Zen gone?"
I left it back at home. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
It's with the flute at home. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's kind of my conundrum. So between not doing and having a less drive of seeking to do, but then a worry on the other side that if I don't do anything, then it's not gonna get any better.
It's really. So are you asking how to
Yeah,
come out of
how
that?
to, yeah.
Don't do anything? No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm trying really hard to be sensible.
Good.
The idea that ego has, or our mind has, that the way ego sees it is this massive emotional reaction happens, and it decides that's not what awakened beings look like, and therefore it decides there must be something that I need to do spiritually to stop that from occurring. So it looks at the effect of the emotion or the emotional response or whatever it is, and decides that there must be something to do to stop that from happening. That makes total logical sense to our thinking process, our sense of being someone, our egoic residue of what's left. In reality, it's the other way around. The idea that there's something I can do spiritually actually creates the emotional disturbance. They are the same two sides of one coin. I am the doer, and there's something to do still, are two sides of the coin. So if we try to fix this problem from an egoic level, it's a never-ending cycle of doing and undoing and doing things to undo what I think I've done, and on it goes. If you can see from reality, from the clear seeing, that the idea that I'm doing something, even spiritual something, is what's causing this emotional outburst. And it's not the fact that the flute's been left at home. Although, of course, ego will always believe that's why. That when I think I have something to do still, something will immediately appear in front of me for me to do. That's the way it works in reality, because you are the one being which is doing all of this in a way. That whenever you believe a thought, then it immediately appears in front of you. Ego can't get out of that because it's sure it's looking at the effect, one side of the coin only, the emotional response, and going, what do I do to get rid of that? It cannot see that that is a manifestation of the idea that you're doing something. It's sure that it must be missing out on some epiphany or some realization, or because that's not what awakened beings look like. And they have this serenity and they never explode like that, is what ego is sure of. So if you can see that the only thing you can do is to step out of that and see that the idea that there's something to do and what you seem to need to do are the same thing. They're one thing manifesting in two different forms. You know, heads is I need to do something. Tails is there's something for me to fix. Ego works in time and it sees the effect, and then doesn't recognize that it is the cause of its own misery. It cannot see that, and it's not supposed to see that, but you can as reality. Which is why I'll give someone a question, what am I really doing? Because when they're not believing that they have something to do, there'll be less and less for them to do, and eventually nothing to do out there or in here either, to come to that peace. You're so powerful that you create your own disturbance when you pick up a thought that is not true for you. If you believe you're unworthy, you'll immediately experience not being good enough in countless ways. If you believe you're not there yet, you'll immediately experience not being there. 2 minutes ago, I was sure I was there because there was just peace and everything was wonderful. And then this thing happens and there's something I must need to do now because I'm obviously not there. Can you see it gets stuck in its own cycle, ego? It creates these problems and thinks it has to fix them. It cannot see that it's creating its own issues because they seem very real. And it's working in cause and effect. If I do something here, this problem out there will go away. But in here and out there are the same. So there's nothing you can do to get rid of something. You can only see that you're already removed from that, but your imagination is so powerful as the self, as the one. The moment you touch that thought, you'll immediately experience it.
Put our hands behind the back, so not touching, not touching.
Could you put your phone away, please, Paul?
Making that.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize. Say that again. Sorry.
Would the question be helpful then as well as to my doing anything? Or
Yeah,
like
it'd be if it feels right to you. Sometimes you can just come out of it and see, wow, I'm making my own disturbance. I'm standing in this still lake, splashing around, asking why it isn't still. And if I just stop, it'll be still. Yeah. But, and if that's still, if you can't seem to stay at that level of clarity, then maybe a question will help until then. If you can see that there is only one and that the ego works in two, cause and effect, and it believes in out there, it believes out there is real. And out there being sometimes emotions, right? Because that's outside of your real being. Can you see what I've said? Can you get even a momentary glimpse of it's creating its own problems?
Yeah, totally believe it.
Then even that might be enough that you're coming out of it. That there's, as soon as I try to fix something, there's something to fix. Ego says, I need to fix it because there's something to fix. In reality, there's something to fix because you think you need to fix yourself. From this preconceived idea that I'm not already the perfect one. And I definitely, if you let your experience keep dictating what you're going to believe about yourself, you'll never quite match up to what the awakened state is like, peace that is unbreakable. Instead, you kind of just step off that merry-go-round and go, right, I'm just going to be myself. See if there's anything to fix at all in my real self, whatever I call that, whatever, that empty space of consciousness, stillness, formlessness, whatever that is. I'm going to be that. And magically these problems stop appearing. Every now and again they'll pop up just to see whether you're going to buy it. And a couple of times you don't buy them. And then even the flute being left at home won't happen. Amazingly. Wow, that's so cool. Daughter remembers a peak every single week in one term. It's a miracle. So it's all the idea they need to fix something, the thing that needs fixing, and even the flute being left at home are all part of the same string that you can't fix. You have to step back out of it. Good stuff. Okay, let's leave it there. Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.